Regarding the book bans on topics related to racial equality and the LGBTQ plus community, what are your thoughts on this as an educator?
I think that not only topics about the LGBTQ plus community or maybe topics dealing with other different things, depending upon the age of the children, certain things are developmentally appropriate or age appropriate. I see some people who are pushing narratives or striving to expose younger children to topics that developmentally they're not there yet, right? And when you have adults that don't understand that, then it can create a problem in terms of that child's development. Whereas maybe it was that parent or guardian's responsibility to introduce certain subjects or conversations with children, not you as an educator or an administrator or a school district. So I say that to say it's a very slippery slope and it's a very fine line between programming and socializing and educating. So when you think of education, it comes from the Latin root "ducere," which means to draw out. And a lot of times you don't see educators really educating, really just looking at a child and striving to draw out of them what's already present in them and encouraging them to be critical thinkers. A lot of times you see adults striving to push their own narrative and what they think into the minds of a child. When there's a child in my classroom and they're having conversations amongst their peers or even with me, I can see where they get certain things from. And I can also see if they thought about things on their own and drew their own conclusion. And a lot of times they're repeating things that they heard in their environment from adults that oftentimes are just not educated at all,
Yeah,
you know? So even if you have school districts that ban certain type of books, that makes books more popular. You
that's
know, you have
true. It
the
makes
key
you want to
topic
read
there.
it like the door example that you gave. They're going
Yeah,
to read it anyway or
yeah,
open the door anyway.
yeah. So one thing that you can do is if children are already engaged having a certain type of conversation, you can strive to figure out a way to help facilitate that conversation in a healthier direction, as opposed to just maybe leaving children to their own devices if they don't really have any scientific basis on the things that they're talking about or any type of resources to have a better understanding of the things that they're talking about or that they've been exposed to. You can strive to meet them where they are as opposed to striving to bring them where you think they need to be. And I think as adults, sometimes we have a very bad habit of doing that instead of just taking the time to strive to meet children where they are, you know? And, I
Mhm.
also do see in terms of a LGBTQ plus agenda that you have people who are part of that community that are also far right,
Yeah,
you know? Um, and then you have some people who are part of that community that are far left, right? I think that sometimes people get this impression that the LGBTQ community is a monolith. You know, it's just one big happy family. You see racism even within that community. You see
absolutely.
ageism even within that community. You see white supremacy even within that community, right? And I think it's
Mhm.
important to realize um, that everything is not just painted with a broad brushstroke, and you have to be very mindful in terms of how you engage and communicate with others because you never necessarily know the type of terrain that you may find yourself on. Uh, in terms of diversity and multiculturalism and just learning about all the human families of the planet Earth, I think that is also critical to us developing an understanding about one another and a tolerance for one another. And whenever you're striving to ban this or marginalize this or tell this person they can't say this or they can't say that, you run the risk of creating more of what it is that you say that you don't like, you know? So it's good to strive to learn about one another. You don't necessarily have to be into or agree with what everybody else does, or you don't have to expect everybody to agree with you, but you should at least be invested in striving to understand one another, because that understanding is really the highest degree of love. And it's difficult to love one another if you just have no understanding about people or where they come from, what their perspectives are, and what's important to them.